All right, everyone, today we're going to be talking about the economy as a social institution. We're not used to thinking about the economy in this way. We sort of treat the economy as a kind of natural phenomenon, something that's out there in the world that just is, in the way that kind of physical laws are a part of our world. But in fact, the economy is socially produced. And we're going to talk in this video about what it means to think about the economy as being socially produced and organized. So, first, when we think about the economy as a social institution, we have to think about what it means to talk about social institutions. We've talked about this before, but a social institution really is just a set of rules and norms that govern behavior. It creates sets of expectations for what's going to happen in some social sphere of our world. And so, when we're thinking about the economy as a social institution, then we're thinking about it as a set of rules and norms that govern the economy, where we think about the economy as a system of producing and distributing material goods. Now, what's really important here is to understand that the way that we go about doing that is to say what those rules and norms actually are, can vary. The economy can be organized around a variety of different rules governing how we produce things and how we distribute who gets the things that we collectively produce. And so this guy, Karl Polanyi, is a very important social scientist, really writing at the sort of into the mid 20th century. And he has this sort of famous way of talking about the different variety of rules that we can organize economies through. He wrote this really famous piece describing historically three different ways we can see or the way we can see the economy being organized: through reciprocity, through redistribution, and through householding. Householding being the kind of most common or core or historically most common way of doing this, where inside of particular households, people are producing the things and distributing the things that they need for their household. Whereas redistribution and reciprocity are more sort of more aggregated ways of doing this. Now, what's really important here is not to get bogged down into thinking through what reciprocity, redistribution, and householding actually are, but to understand that there are different ways that we can go about organizing the economy. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. All right, so this is the economy as a social institution. Now, when we think about our own economy, what we need to understand is that it is organized through capitalism and markets. Okay, so capitalism is the sort of system that organizes, or the basic rules of the game, and it's within capitalism that markets really flourish as a way of especially distributing goods, but also, as we'll see, connected to producing those goods. So what exactly then is capitalism? If we're going to say that our economy is organized as a capitalist economy, what are we actually saying when we say that? Well, capitalism, there's several sort of parts of that, but really at its core, capitalism simply means that the productive resources of society, right? The productive resources of society, the land, the materials we use to create things, all of the tools, the machinery, all right, all of the computers that are used in producing things, all of these things that help us create those goods, right? All of that is privately owned, right? That is to say that it's not collectively owned by the society. It's not organized through the state. It's organized through private actors within a society owning those productive resources and making decisions upon how to best use those resources. And so this then means that production and distribution are going to be organized through markets. So if private actors own the productive resources of a society, what ends up happening is that if you don't own those productive resources, you can't make money off of those productive resources. You have to sell your labor to those people who own the productive resources, so that you can use them to produce those commodities, those what we'll eventually call commodities, but those goods that we need for our survival. Right. So really, one of the core things about production and distribution organized through markets is that we buy and sell labor in what we call labor markets. And in fact, in no small part, that is why you are in university today, because you are trying to sort of craft your own labor, construct your labor in a particular way, and then you will go out and leave the university and sell your labor to someone else who's then going to employ it in a particular way with combining it with those productive resources. And it also means that we distribute our goods through what we call product markets. So labor markets, where we buy and sell labor, are critical to capitalism, and product markets, where we buy and sell the goods that we need, like milk and bread and things like this, and our clothes and so forth, right, are organized through markets. So let's actually drill down then to see what this actually means. So how exactly is a market economy organized? Well, again, we're thinking of the economy as a social institution, so that means there are sets of rules and norms governing what goes on in the production and distribution of a market economy. So what then is the central rule then for production in a market economy? At its core, the question that those people who own the productive resources are asking is, can I make a profit by organizing this resource and buying labor power? Can I make a profit off of the good that I'm going to make? Whether or not some good gets produced is contingent on whether or not the people who own the productive resources can make a profit off of it. So you think about food as a good that's going to be distributed through a market, right? Production is going to then be organized in such a way to ensure that a profit can be made. And so this is why we get these big, large industrial farms organized through private enterprises who are then going to sell that product on a market in the hopes of making a profit. The only reason they are doing this is to make sure they can get a profit. This is, of course, very different than, let's say, either a household garden or a cooperative community garden, where people are raising their own food sources, right? They're growing their own tomatoes and zucchini and squash and herbs and things like that for their own consumption, right? That would be a very different way of organizing. And Polanyi would call that household garden, that's a form of householding. You can think about community gardens where people go in and they as a community produce food and then share in that food as an alternative way of organizing the production of those goods, of those vegetables. So that's production in a market economy. What then is the central rule for distribution in a market economy? How is it that we go about deciding who gets the things that are being produced? And at the core of that is the question of who has the ability to pay. You only get the good or service on offer if you have the money to purchase that. It doesn't matter if you really need it. It doesn't matter if you want it more than someone else. If you don't have the money, if you don't have the ability to pay for it, then you don't get it. So it is distributed exclusively in a pure kind of market economy. Goods are distributed exclusively through the capacity to purchase those things. And if you don't have the ability to pay, you don't get the good or service, right? So think about the distribution. I like to buy a lot of books. And so the distribution of books, really today, the way you got probably books for your classes and so forth, is distributed through your capacity to purchase those things from a distributor like Amazon or perhaps another bookstore. Let's contrast that, though, with the way that libraries organize the distribution of books, right? There, you have to sign up and get a library card. If you're a member of the community, you can then check out a book for a given period of time. They will take note that you're the one who has the book at this particular time. You get it for 2 weeks, maybe a month, however long it is. and then you bring it back. And if you want to check it out again, so long as nobody else is asking for the book or nobody else is requesting the book, then you get to keep the book for yourself for that period of time, right? So that is a different way of distributing that exact same good, not through a market, rather through a kind of a centralized redistribution scheme, as Polanyi might call it. Okay, so the economy then should be thought about as a set of social institutions. We've talked about what those institutions look like. It's really central to understand how it is that our economy is organized through capitalism and markets, and to see that that is merely one way that we could go about organizing that economy. That is one way that that social institution of the economy could be constructed and organized. And there are a variety of other ways we can imagine, other ways historically, in fact, for most of human history, we did not organize our economy through capitalism and markets. That's a recent invention historically. And there are other alternative ways we could envision, perhaps, organizing our economy. All right, thank you guys very much. Look forward to talking to you soon.